Hello and welcome to the next Lukozer retro game review video, and for this one it is Lemmings, which was released by Psygnosis for Commodore 64 in late 1993, which makes it one of the last major Commodore 64 titles release, if not the last. 93, Commodore 64 was, well, extremely close to being pensioned off. Now, Lemmings was really the game that absolutely catapulted the popularity of the Amiga, although, I mean, it had been around for a while already. In fact, I'm fairly sure the Amiga version of Lemmings was released earlier than this, but I can't remember the exact date. I've already reviewed the Amiga version anyway, so I mean, take a look at that one to see, find out those particular details. Now, I can't remember who it was who actually coded this. It wasn't DMA Designs who did the Amiga version. I mean, it's already pretty rare that this is a Commodore 64 game that was actually published by Psygnosis. Prior to this, I think all the Psygnosis games released on the Commodore 64 were licensed to Ocean, and they released them, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I'm fairly sure that was the case. So you would probably think that trying to convert Lemmings from the Amiga to the Commodore 64 is a bit of a thankless task. And well, on the surface you'd be right, but everything is here. I mean, it plays the same as the Amiga version as you would expect, but the control method is a bit of an issue. Lemmings really is a game that was designed with using the mouse, very much in mind, and of course that wasn't an option for the vast majority of Commodore 64 owners. So they had to implement something different. And to be fair, the method they came up with is probably as good as they could hope for. Now, what I'll do to show just how close they kept this to the Amiga version, we'll play the intro, which unfortunately does take a little while to load. So there you go, it does even have that, which to be fair, not a lot of people expected. Now, okay, it is significantly slower than the intro to the Amiga version, and you can certainly tell the difference in resolution, but then what do you expect? Commodore 64 doesn't have anything like the resolution that the Amiga had. But it got around that limitation quite well. And that's something that happens frequently throughout this game. There are a lot of limitations that the Commodore 64 has compared to the Amiga, but more or less right the way through the game, the programmers managed to get around it without too many problems. So right, back on the title page at last, and yes, I did edit the loading of the title sequence. So let's get a game underway, and that means having to change disk. Right, so off we go. Our levels don't take too long to load. What helps is that the game came with 2 discs. The main program was on side A of disc 1, and then depending on the difficulty level, if you wanted like fun, tricky, taxing and mayhem, they all came on their own side of a disc. So the fun level that I'm on now is on side B of disc 1. Then the next difficulty is side A of disc 2, and the mayhem one is side B of disc 2. So although there is quite a bit of disc accessing, that's the only disc swapping, is when you're selecting what level to play, or you know, what difficulty setting. So in that regard, it's not so bad. Now, I cannot believe anybody watching this has not played Lemmings. So let's just jump straight in. Let's see if I can pause it, because I can never remember what the fucking pause key is for the Commodore 64. Oh well. Right. Well, I say, you know how to play the game, so basically your lemmings all appear out of the hatchway here, and they have to be guided to the exit here. And in order to do that, you have to give them certain skills. So for this one, it's the digger skill. As you can see, I could well, I started off with the possibility of making 10 diggers, but you only need to use 1. So I rescued everyone there. On to the next level. I don't know about how long cassette loading would have taken, because this game was available on cassette. I imagine it probably did take a little while, but... So on this one, only floaters can survive. Now, because I can't find the pause key, it's the CLR home key. So, in order to select the skill, you have to press the number on the keypad, on the keyboard. So if you want the climber, you press 1. The floater here, you press 2. The bomber is 3. 4 gives you the blocker. 5 gives you the builder who builds the bridge. 6 gives you the basher. 7 gives you the miner, and 8 gives you the digger. So on to the next level. Don't tell me it's 0 for to pause the game here and not CLR home key. Well, we'll soon find out. Let's try it with this one. No, right, so I've got to get the blockers here. I'll let that one walk a hell of a long way. Now, as you can see, the moving the crosshairs is, oh bollocks, I fucked this one up. Alright, let's nuke the lot. Yes, using the crosshairs is done by joystick control. You also see it slows down when a lot of lemmings are appearing, but I'll cover that in a moment. try that again without fucking it up. So I nearly did it again. Yeah, moving the crosshairs with the joystick, it's the only way they really had to do it. It's not ideal, but it works. Okay, so now everyone will be guided to the exit. Now we can increase the number of lemmings that appear, which if you saw my review of the Commodore 64 version, it's something that I did quite often. But because of limitations of the Commodore 64, you remember the Amiga version, you could have up to 100 lemmings in a level. The Commodore 64 can't do that. I think the limit is it's either 30 or 40. And the other thing is that there we go, so we completed that one, so now we can nuke the blockers that are left. You have to nuke them because they will stay there indefinitely. Yes, the lemmings themselves are not sprites due to one of the problems again with Commodore 64. You can only have 8 sprites in a row, so when you're playing a game that has like 30 characters moving around, that limitation becomes a real issue. And the way they got around it, I think, is quite impressive. What they've done, the lemmings are using like software sprite for character sets or whatever, and the hardware sprites are used to create the backgrounds. And yeah, I think it works pretty well. The only drawback is that that is the reason why the actual playing area does seem fairly small. In fact, I mean, looking at it, it's only about the width of half the screen. In the Amiga version, you had the width, the whole width of the screen. With this one, yeah, unfortunately, you don't have that. My face come out. But I mean, I think that's only a small, a small sacrifice there. I mean, when you consider that the end result is that they've been able to get the actual Amiga Lemmings game onto a Commodore 64. Yeah, it's not that much of a compromise. There we go. Now, the music, incidentally, is by Jerome Tell, so it's a bit different to his usual style, but he has actually kept it, to pretty close to the Amiga originals. So again, pretty good job done there. And to be honest, I didn't think the music was a particular high point of the Amiga version anyway. The sampled speech is obviously missing, not all that surprising really. So we need the bashes to get through here. I also think that despite the Commodore 64 having a much lower resolution than the Amiga, they've done a great job of actually, making the Lemmings characters themselves look pretty pretty good. I mean, they are instantly recognisable, and the animation is there, including the different animations on each of the various abilities that you give them. So yeah, graphically, I think it is, you know, every bit as good as you could hope for. Even if you had pretty high expectations, it meets them. Likewise, sound. I mean, obviously you're not going to get the samples, you know, oh no and let's go at the start of each level and all that business. But the sound effects that are there are good enough. And for the most part, the gameplay is there. But the control method, I suspect if I had only ever played the Commodore 64 version, I'd have no problem with the control method. I mean, if you're one of those players who would, you know, just sit there with the joystick in hand, but, you know, the actual computer was, you know, somewhere, you know, not in front of you, it's not a good control method. Thankfully, I wasn't one of those people back in the day. I would always have the keyboard right by me, largely because if a game allowed me to use keys rather than a joystick, I would use keys. I've always preferred using keys to rather than using the joystick. Right, so we'll blow up this fucker. I've just turned into a blocker. So we've now got that hole there, and then I need to do the same again with another lemming here. There you go, that should destroy that area, and then they can all make it through the yeah, there we go. So, I mean, I don't know why they chose to have it so that the mouse cursor couldn't go down into, you know, the selection area. But I mean, you know, having the keyboard, that works just as well, I suppose. Plus and minus keys will increase the rate that they come out, but unlike the Amiga version, because there aren't as many lemmings per level on the Commodore 64 version, you really need to use the keys to adjust the rate that they appear into the level there. But yeah, the control method takes a bit of getting used to, but once you've got the hang of it, it's really no problem. I can't remember how far away they need to be in order to dig. There we go. Okay. Alright, so now I'll just try and get these two out. Well, I've got 15 diggers, so we'll see if I can get these two out with So how do I rate it then? I rate it pretty highly. I think it's they've done a pretty decent job of it. So I will score this. Oh, come on. Fucking hell, now where are they going? All the way over here, so they're going to go all the way to the fucking start and then turn around and come back. I'll tell you what, no they fucking don't. I think I've rescued enough. There we go. Yeah, easily got through that one. So I will score this 8.5 out of 10. I think that yeah, when you compare the limitations of the Commodore 64 to the Amiga, the Commodore 64 for the most part really doesn't compare very well. The Amiga is just a lot more powerful, but I think they've surpassed what everyone was expecting. I don't think you could have realistically asked for better, and I'm sure people would have asked for better, but they were, yeah, it wasn't going to happen. This is as good as they could have done, and I think they've done a pretty good job of it. So yeah, that is Lemmings for Commodore 64, 8.5 out of 10. Yeah, you'd almost think it was a bit over ambitious, but yeah, but they did it all right. Yeah, it's worked out pretty well. So that brings this review to an end, because I can't be asked to try this level, and we'll see you at the next one.